all for being here. My name is Mark Greer. I'm the Executive Director of the Akron Bicentennial, and we're really excited about tonight's Discovering Our History Forum on the Soapbox Derby, the International Soapbox Derby. Few things are more Akron than the Soapbox Derby. Few things like microphone feedback. And so we're really happy and excited about this evening's forum. A huge thank you to the Soapbox Derby and the Executive Director, Dennis VanFossen. It's been truly a pleasure working with them as partners with the Akron Bicentennial, and this is going to be one of the most exciting history forums that we've had all year, so consider yourselves lucky. Just a couple announcements. All of you, when you came in, you should have got a 3x5 index card. These are your question cards for the highly anticipated Q&A portion of tonight's forum. Go ahead and write down your questions during the forum. About midway through, myself and my colleague Rose Vance Grom will be going up and down the aisles. We'll collect the question cards, and then we will hand them off to our distinguished panel for the Q&A portion. A few announcements. We want to let you know about in the lobby. Of course you saw the Soapbox Derby car and the Step and Repeat, but also you probably saw a table filled with books from our friends at the University of Akron Press. We have a couple of books for sale, including the Akron History Anthology, Akron at 200. So you can pick up a copy at the discounted price until the end of this year of $35. There's also a title about the Soapbox Derby, but we also have this book called How I Saw It, My Photographic Memory of the Soapbox Derby, and this is going to be free to everyone in attendance today. So you get a book, and you get a book, and you get a book. So please be sure, don't leave tonight without your free copy, totally free here, and a couple of other titles that are available for purchase. We'll have a few more announcements about some upcoming events for the Akron Bicentennial at the end of the forum, but as always, please make sure you visit our website at akron200.org. That's akron200.org for all of our events, and we have many going up until the end of this year that are still left on our calendar. So thanks again for being here as part of our Discovering Our History Forum, and now please help us welcome our moderator, Mr. Jasen Sokol.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Jasen Sokol. I've been the race announcer for the First Energy All-American Soapbox Derby since 2019, and in that time, I have learned that it is a long and colorful history at the Soapbox Derby. So I'm really excited to get to share some of that and to welcome our panelists. First, Derby historian, our PR chair. He's been with us for many, many years, Mr. Bob Troyer. And I should mention Derby Hall of Famer Bob Troyer at that. 6-time First Energy All-American Soapbox Derby qualifier from right here in the Akron area, Meredith Brown. And I don't know which title I should introduce this next person with first. Do I go with Interim Executive Director or 2007 World Champion? I don't know which one should be first, but either way, Dennis VanFossen Jr. Thanks to all three of you for being with us tonight. And Bob, I wanted to start with you, and let's take it all the way back to the beginning, because there's such a history between Akron and the Derby that I think sometimes people forget it didn't actually start here, did it?
It did not. It started in Dayton, Ohio. In 1933, there was a news photographer for the Dayton Daily News who was roaming around the city looking for interesting pictures to take. It was during the Depression. There wasn't a whole lot going on. And he came across a group of young boys who had built cars out of anything they could find. Buggy wheels, wagon wheels, whatever, racing, and he thought, boy, that looked really interesting. So he organized several weeks later to have them come back in 1933 in an organized race, and he had some trophies for the winners, that kind of thing. And that was literally the birth of the Soapbox Derby as we know it today. People often ask, well, why is it called the Soapbox Derby? Well, this was during the Depression. You didn't buy soap in a jug or a bar. People bought soap and crates. And that's what some of the young people had used to build their cars. They were soapboxes, hence soapbox derby.
And so it starts in Dayton, Ohio, and it took off pretty well in that first year, didn't it?
It did. Myron Scott was a very smart newsman at Dayton. He saw the potential of that, and he thought it would be a good idea to develop a national program. And he very wisely copyrighted the name, the activity, trademarked it, and went and searched for a national sponsor. And he found a really good one. It was called General Motors Corporation. And Chevrolet became the national sponsor of the Soapbox Derby for the All-American Soapbox Derby in 1934, which was held in Dayton. And there was another great thing at the time that the Chevrolet people came up with was having the local newspapers around the country be co-sponsors. And that was a natural tie-in because newspapers, we didn't have internet, obviously. We didn't have radio, or we had radio but not television. I wasn't there, I'm told that. Anyway, they did.
He wanted us to make that clear, by the way, that he was not there for the first one.
Well, Dennis would probably add that later, but not the same framing. But anyway, the Chevrolet dealers were major sponsors of major advertisers in newspapers, so it was a great relationship. It went on for many years.
And then it moves to Akron after just 1 year.
1 year.
So was it something wrong with Dayton? I mean, we know Akron's great, but why make the move after
Well,
just 1 year?
Akron's greater, obviously, but the legend was that they were looking for a place that was hillier. I'm not sure that was the only reason, but there was great support from the Akron community. There was a journalist in town by the name of John S. Knight, who was editor of the Beacon Journal even back then, and he thought it would be a great idea, and they brought it to Akron in 1935, and it was run on a big hill on Talmadge Avenue over on the east side of town, and that was the second All-American Soapbox Derby.
And we learned, I think it was the 80th anniversary, right after they repaved it a few years ago. We know now that hill is no joke, and one of the broadcasters found out that it's no joke too, right?
Is that broadcaster in the room here? Could we
No, I was
see-
thinking about the other one, not
Oh,
the one that
I-
crashed the car.
About 80, well, you said something about 80 years ago.
Yeah, no, it wasn't me that crashed that.
Okay, well, that will come later. In 1935, there was a sportscaster for NBC by the name of Graham McNamee, and he was very famous, and he came to Akron to broadcast a race countrywide in some foreign countries, and one of the cars with one of the youngsters driving got a little bit out of control, and he ran into it. And that made wire services all over the country. And that helped, he was injured, but not seriously. It got the name Soapbox Derby in places it hadn't been before.
Yeah, I guess it's no different than modern racing, right? You see the wrecks on SportsCenter, just
Of
like
course.
they didn't have that. So, but we were only there for a year, and then over to Derby Downs the next year.
Derby Downs was created in 1936, and obviously where it is now, the hill is there. And again, John S. Knight and the Beacon Journal was very supportive of finding a permanent home for the Derby. And Myron Scott was also very interested, Chevrolet was interested, and they built the track in less than a year, just a matter of a few months. And I always use the line, today you couldn't get the building permits in that length of time, but they probably didn't pay attention to building permits back then anyway. But it was built as part of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, and the workers who constructed it were members of the Work Progress Administration.
And it really, really took off at that point. I've seen some of the old reels from the Chevrolet Corporation when they did it, and you just see the crowds, even in 35, 36, the crowds were massive.
Well, keep in mind, there wasn't a whole lot going on. We didn't have a lot of competition and activities at that time. But I did a lot of research right here in this building. I came here in the 80th anniversary of Derby Downs, which would have been 2016. And one of the facts that I found very interesting, being the PR volunteer all these years, in the 1936 race in Akron, Ohio, at Derby Downs, there were more than 500 registered media representatives covering the program. So it had really taken off. And another interesting story, it was right next to Shirley Fulton's airport out there. They talked about how the AP photographer had chartered a plane to take him and his film to Cleveland to process it, to get it on the AP wire before the UPI got there. So this is big news back then.
Those were the days of news competition, and with the newspaper sponsoring it, I'm assuming every newspaper sent somebody, right?
They did. It was great.
So then we get into the war era, and I believe that was the first time that they had to cancel a race for a couple of years.
They did not have a race. 1941 was the last race for 4 years. A hiatus. They started again after the war.
So how'd they go about recovering after having to cancel for those years?
I think they did very well. They just continued doing what they were doing, and the newspapers were supporting it, and it went very well.
And there was one thing missing, though, from those early derbies. Girls couldn't race at that point.
They could not. In 1971, it was modified to allow girls to enter, and those were different times too. It was like boys took shop class and girls took home economics kind of thing, and it just continued throughout other organizations. But girls did enter in 71, and I believe there were 6 local girl champions who competed that year. Jeff Iolo will stand up and correct me if it's not. Oh, he is already 5.
5. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. They competed in that first race with girls in 71. And then 4 years later, Karen Stead from Lower Bucks County, Pennsylvania, was the first girl champion, world champion, which was great.
And it's incredible even now, because when we have our community events, when we have Senior Day at Derby Downs, and we have some of the corporate challenge. I know I took part in the corporate challenge when I was still working in the Akron area, and our driver was somebody who said, I wish I could have raced as a kid. I wasn't allowed to race as a kid. So now some of those people are coming back who couldn't race at that point are finally getting the chance.
And getting to add it on their bucket list.
Right around the 1970s is when things got a little hairy for the Derby, though, because you sort of had a 1-2 punch there. You had.
And in the fall of 72, Chevrolet announced that it was going to drop the sponsorship that they'd had for since 1934. And that was a real blow. They decided to use their money elsewhere. And I give kudos to the Akron Area Chamber of Commerce and the Akron business leaders, civic leaders. George Britton was head of the Akron Area Chamber of Commerce, and he rallied everybody in support, and the Chevrolet transferred all the copyrights and all the rights for the program to the Akron Chamber to run the program in 1973. And a little bit of a history of me. I was at that time, in 1973, I was at Firestone, and I was chairman of the PR committee for the Chamber of Commerce. And George Britton, I don't know whether you have a picture of George up there yet or not, but he was quite an arm twister. And he said, would you mind being the volunteer public relations guy for just 1 year? That was 52 years ago. So he was persuasive.
The Derby kind of has that effect on people, doesn't
Yes,
it?
it does.
Just come in and help with this
Just
one thing.
time.
But one of the things that was kind of a bummer about Chevrolet leaving was they were bringing in a lot of celebrities at the
A
time.
lot of celebrities. They, well, at that time, the early days of television, the late 40s, 50s, and even into the 60s, television series programs only had one sponsor. They did not have 16 like you see, all through the time now. And Chevrolet was a huge sponsor, and they sponsored Dinah Shore's variety show. She was at the Derby several times. A few years later, they were the sole sponsor of Bonanza all the time it was on the air. So the Bonanza boys were here many, many times. Lauren Green and company, Michael Landon, Pernell Roberts. So yes, there were big celebrities, and they had, that's when they had tens of thousands of people to track. And they also had a huge parade in downtown Akron the day before the race, in the packed Main Street. The Mayflower Hotel was the headquarters of the operation. And they paraded to the Mayflower Hotel from the north side of the city, and just packed with people.
Who is your favorite celebrity? Because I know you got to meet a lot of them.
Well, I didn't get to meet this particular guy, but my childhood hero was Roy Rogers. And my father was a race director in Portage County, and we came to the race every year. And when I found out that Roy Rogers was going to be there in 1956, I was 10. I thought, this is better than Christmas. And I couldn't believe that I actually saw Roy Rogers in person. Next year he came back and brought his wife Dale Evans with him. And he was very popular. I mean, for the group of the boys were 11 to 15 years old at that time. That was the Roy Rogers. Thinking about, we just had Halloween. I always look at Halloween as Roy Rogers. Cowboy hat and all that.
So a lot of fun people coming in. Now let's fast forward back to the 70s, because we mentioned sort of a 1-2 punch there. Chevrolet leaves.
Chevrolet
and then
left.
shortly thereafter, there's a bit of a cheating issue.
The Chamber of Commerce agreed to sponsor it in '73 with the idea of managing the race and hoping to find a new national sponsor. Unfortunately, that race was won by a young man from Boulder, Colorado by the name of Jim Gronin. And again, we didn't have, in those days, in '73, did not have cameras in our pocket, that kind of thing. But later that day and the next day, people started showing us photographs, probably Polaroids that they'd taken that day. And the steel plates, there were 3 steel plates on the bridge, and they all went around they all went down at the same time. And 2 cars went off. One of them stuck to the plate as it went down, so it got a little extra boost. And we couldn't figure that out at first. But that Sunday we made the decision that we needed to do something because something wasn't right. And we, on early Monday morning of '73 in August, we took the car to the Goodyear Air Dock. And the only place in town that had an X-ray machine big enough to plug. And we took it, and you could see the switch and the headrest that the young man had to activate. The wires going up to the front, and the magnet was in the front of the car, holding it to the. So we immediately made the decision to disqualify, and we had a press conference at the Cascade Holiday Inn, and literally cut the top off the car so the press could see what we found.
And that car still exists. I believe it's still at Derby Dallas.
It is. Put it back together. It's not so cut in half. Is it, Jeff? And we had named the runner-up Brett Yarborough from Elk Grove, California, as the chairman, as the winner. But what happened with all that publicity, it was extremely difficult to get anybody to step up to be a national sponsor. And there was worldwide publicity about that for a long time. And so the next couple of years were fairly lean. Again, the Akron community did a lot. The chamber, after it decided it couldn't sponsor it anymore, the Akron JCs stepped in, and they formed a committee of business leaders and civic leaders, and formed a corporation called International Soapbox Derby Inc., which was a tax-exempt program. It still exists. It's still the organization that runs the program. All the JCs are not around. And there's a board made up of Akron people from other parts of the country, and it's gone very well after about 75.
And you were able to find a sponsor, Novar, I believe it was, right?
Novar, and to be very correct on it, they found us. The news media was talking after the 75 race that things were pretty lean in the treasurer's office. And Novar came to us, asked if they could meet with us to talk about national sponsorship. And they sponsored the 76 race and continued in that role through 1988. They were that really helped save the program at that time.
And there were a lot of other changes too, and it's sort of where I think we started to see the modern Derby start to emerge, because the first thing we start to move towards the kit cars.
The cars. The many of the youngsters who won the race over the years spent 1,000 hours building the car. And by the mid-'70s, families were changing. Even 50 years ago, there were a lot more things to do than build a soapbox derby racer, and it was very difficult to do. At the same time, there were single-parent families. There were fathers who had no clue they didn't have workshops at home like our dads did in my generation. And we came up with the idea for '76 to build, to offer kit cars, which was somewhat of a misnomer, was not actually a kit. It was a pattern for the various pieces of the car that you laid down and cut out. But all the hardware was included and that kind of thing. And the first junior division champion was in 1976. Mark Graber from New Philadelphia.
And those evolved into, eventually, it took some time, but eventually it kind of evolved into what we have now.
Even simpler, in 1992 we introduced the stock cars, which is literally a kit. It has everything in it. It's got the body shell, all the parts, the hardware, the floorboard, and it's literally like if you go to IKEA and take home a big box and build your dresser or whatever you're doing, dining room table, same principle. And that was very successful. That started in 1992. And then 3 years later, in 95, we introduced the super stock to take place of the kit car for the little larger kid. It was the same principle of the car, just for bigger kids. And the traditional cars like this one here, and these were like the traditional cars in the old days before they. But we had kits for those starting in 2000.
And by the
called Master.
And by the way, this is the car that won the world championship this year. It was an Akron area champ that won it. Colt Melman, world champion in that very car right there. So always proud to see the Akron area drivers win.
Very much. And while you're talking about Akron drivers and connection with the Bicentennial, Akron's good friend Dave Lieber headed up a project to build a history center down on Main Street near the Civic Theater. And he came to us asking about a car that could be displayed there. And he thought it'd be nice to have an Akron angle. And we had a car in our museum that was built by a young man by the name of Don Strube. He actually lived in Warren, but Warren didn't have a race, so he raced in Akron, won the local in Akron, and then went on to win the All-American. And back in those days, the prize was a college scholarship. And Don used his college scholarship to become an engineer at school, in his high school, Akron U and Youngstown. And he went to work for Chevrolet, was an engineer at General Motors Packard Electric Plant in Warren forever, until he retired in the early 2000s.
How about that? Now, one of the other big changes, roughly in this era, was trying to make it more of a year-round thing, because the way it was you would win your local derby, and then you would go to Akron, and if you got knocked out in the first round, it was, hey, you got to go down the hill once, and thanks, see you next year. That's it. But that's not really enough to generate a whole year-round program. So that changed though around this era.
In the early to mid-90s, we introduced the rally program. And the rallies are held around the country. It's the same system that NASCAR and other race organizations use. You accumulate points for being there, for the place you finish in the race, and then each year we invite the point leaders in each of the regions around the country to come to Akron to compete in the All-American Rally Division.
And that gives the drivers and the families so many more opportunities, right?
Some of these people travel every weekend. There's something going on everywhere, and it's not just in Florida, like in Chicago where I live. They have it inside. They have rallies in the middle of February.
I think I saw somewhere, is it New Hampshire that has one like inside a parking deck in the middle of winter or something like that?
Well, when my grandson raced the first time in a rally, just to get experience in Chicago, it was at a racetrack, a horse racetrack. And the pictures that I have of my grandson in his first race, the tote board is behind it.
Wait. They weren't betting on so
No,
much. Oh, okay.
Don't get us into that.
Yeah, that might not be good. So, but there are two people sitting next to you that know that rally trail really, really well. And I want to start with Dennis VanFossen Jr. because you ran that trail for a lot of years, but how did you get involved at first?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So actually, it all started in 1997, the All-American Soapbox Derby that year. My dad actually took my sister and I to that race. I actually remember at the age of 5 going through the tunnel and walking up to the grandstands on the other side, back when the old grandstands were still in existence, so not the ones we see today. I don't remember anything else, but I do remember that the story's been told that at that race he asked my sister if we wanted to race, and me being 5, I didn't necessarily have an opinion. But my sister did, and she said yes. And since then, I haven't left. So I grew up on Derby Downs at a very young age in 1998, at the age of 5, and started racing at the age of 8 in 2001, and never stopped throughout my years. And I raced as much as I could, and I really had a good time being at the track, but necessarily didn't have a good, wasn't really any good. It took me 4.5 years to win my first race, which was a lot of perseverance, which is a core value for us here in the Derby, but it took me a while to kind of get it figured out. So.
And that'll happen sometimes, but once you did, you really figured it out.
Yeah.
4.5 years without a win, and then points championship in 06, right?
Yes, yeah. So in 2006, we actually became the national champion, world points champion for that. We actually went to 81 races in that year, and realized that I didn't talk about my sister who won in 2001, but we skipped that part, so I apologize. So in 2006, I went to 81 races in that year. We ended up winning 29 out of 81 races, hardly finished lower than 4th. We had a really, really successful year. Luckily for us, that was the year of ESPN. Jeff remembers it pretty well, that he was the one announcing me that race, but we actually had to wait in a rain delay for an hour to get to the racing because of our time slot. And I still, to this day, I'm a little bit salty about that rain delay because in reality, I most likely would have won, back-to-back world championships because I did win in 2007 now. But I finished 5th, but it was a great year, and I'll be honest, I don't necessarily remember a lot of the wins. There's a few wins throughout that year that I do remember, but what I remember the most is about usually the losses, but maybe the time that I spent with my dad in the garage, or going to different racetracks, or seeing my mom run out. That's the stuff that I remember the most, and all the friends that I made while racing.
That race, by the way, is still on YouTube if you want to see
Yes.
what it looked like at that year. 2007, though, is when it came together for you. You got that world championship.
Yeah, so in 2007, I ended up winning the whole thing. I was able to become me and my sister, the first brother-sister on the rally side, become World Rally Superstock champions. We did it in the same division, which is, kind of unheard of as well. And it was a great time in our family history, but at the same time, I'll be completely honest, I remember very little of it. There's actually pictures of me and Jeff holding up the trophy at the end of the finish line. Don't really remember that part, but what I do remember is actually going to that race afterwards and going out to eat with the rally commissioner at the time, and my buddy Scott Meesey, who won the Masters division, and actually celebrating in the bathroom while we're washing our hands. And that's kind of sticks with me still to this day. And he's out in New York now, being a playwright, but I still remember that experience that I had with him at the track as opposed to actually winning the race itself.
And that, when you first said that, it kind of surprised me. But then, as I started thinking more about how Derby Nation is and how the racers are, it kind of makes sense, because I get the feeling that a lot of the drivers and a lot of the families, they might remember some of the wins and losses, but it's more the relationships, the friendships that are made, and things like that.
Yeah, the competition's there. Obviously, you do this thing for the competition. That's part of the reason why you do the thing. But it's really about the experience that you have, that Derby experience that you have with your friends, your family, your extended family. And we see sometimes, all the time, we see people that are having bad experiences at home and start racing soapbox Derby and have a better experience at home. We have people that are kids that are having a horrible time at home, start racing soapbox Derby and have a new adopted family on the other side. So it's really an experience that's unlike any other in sports. It's not necessarily where you just drop your kid off and pick them up 3 hours later. You have to be there with them every single weekend. And you really don't have that family bond like you do in other sports, which is, a common theme for all of our racers.
And it is work for all the families. Anybody that has handled a car sitting in the audience can tell you that.
Yes, yeah. My dad has 2 knee surgeries, so I understand.
Let's bring in Meredith Brown now, because Meredith is one of our modern era racers, 6 times to the First Energy All-American Soapbox Derby. But tell us about how it all got started.
Well, we first got started when my dad actually heard about it on TV one day, just randomly came across and heard about it and was like, this could be so fun for our family to get into it. And eventually they had me, and they're like, let's do it, let's get into this. So I think I was about 7 years old, and they went out and bought a stock car, and it came in the mail in a giant box, and I was so excited because it was pink. They had pink that year, and I was so excited. I'm pretty sure I played in the box more than the car, but that's okay. And when I turned 8, we went to our first local, and we raced, and that's kind of how it started out.
What's it like when you get to that point where you've made the first Energy All-American Soapbox Derby? Because I think you qualified first as a local champ, right?
Yeah, that's right.
What's that like when you win that local and you punch that ticket?
It's so exciting. I believe I was 11 years old when I won in stock and went to the All-American for the very first time, and I just remember going to Akron and seeing the big hill with the 3 lanes across, and it's just so exciting, and you never know what's going to happen, and we had never been there, and it was just something new and exciting to get to race on.
What are some of those favorite memories that you have from your time in racing?
Definitely first starting out, just getting to meet new people from all over the country and all over the world, really. Just making those friends as a little kid is so exciting to meet new people. And definitely one of my favorite memories is traveling to a new track. We actually went to Sanford, Florida. And the first time we went, it really put into perspective how big this organization really is. And that's one of my favorite memories.
It always blows my mind every summer when I see people, because when we start the week, we introduce everybody sort of by like geographic regions, and so you're with people from your state or a neighboring state, and by the end of Saturday night, it's just like one pile of people all going up together, because you literally know and make friends from everywhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's one other part of Derby Nation that I know we got to talk about, and that is the Super Kids, because I know you're really, really involved with that. What are the Super Kids?
So the Super Kids is an organization for children with special needs that are unable to pilot a car by themselves. So in the Super Kids division, you'll have the co-pilot, which is the normal driver, and then you'll have the Super Kid right next to them in the same car, and they will go down the hill together. And it's just for them to have the same experience as the hill.
Yeah, and they get to run the World Championships. It starts the day before the first Energy All-American Soapbox Derby, and then the top 6 every year actually get to race during the first Energy All-American Soapbox Derby. And I always say that's one of my favorite parts of the week, and certainly one of my favorite parts of race day, is when you get to see, I'm standing on a bridge at the finish line, so I get to kind of watch as people are coming down. You don't usually see people's eyes when they're coming down, but the way the Super Kids cars are built, you can usually see the drivers, and to see the emotion and the look on their face is just, it's priceless. It's really cool. So as you look back, Meredith, on your years in Derby, what are some of the biggest takeaways, and what has the experience meant to you?
Definitely the biggest takeaways for me, I learned a lot of sportsmanship and how to lose with integrity, and just to be a good sport and a good person overall, because you're not going to win them all. And you just have to know that, and just to be kind to others and helpful, because some people come out to race but they might not have as much help, and to just lend that helping hand is really something that I really value about the sport.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about where we go from here in Derby Nation, because it's such a mindset shift, I feel like, because it wasn't that long ago, right, that we weren't so sure the Derby was going to survive. I saw the 25 Hill car out in the lobby when I came in, and that was around the era when we weren't so sure what was coming next, Dennis, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and funny enough, actually, me and my dad built that car back in a random warehouse many years ago. And the reason why I know that is just the way it was built. But so we had some troubling times, and we're not shy away from that. But one thing we've been able to do is kind of pivot. And how do we expand, and how do we keep on sharing the Derby experience to the masses? And one way we're able to do that is through our education program, where we're able to take our mini car program or our big car program and really kind of take that and allow that to go to different kids all across the country and be able to participate and share that Derby experience. But it also gives us more year-round programming as well. We obviously have public events, private events all year as well. Our core time is April to October, but we have a full-time staff. We have staff workers that are working around the clock for this organization and our program. And we really take time and we really care about this thing. And it's been great for me at almost 140 days in to really kind of see that and see how much people actually care about an organization that's meant so much to me. I've been around this thing, like I've said, since 1998. It still smells the same when I go to Derby Downs. And it's just nice to kind of go back home.
Yeah, and one of the questions that often comes up, especially with the younger generations, because the perception is that they're so glued to their screens. I see that. I teach at John Carroll University during the day, and you see so many students and people of that age, it's video games, it's this and that. So how do we keep the Derby relevant to a generation like that?
Yeah, so we're that first baseline of STEM, that sometimes that first spark of interest that some kids are actually have on becoming the future aerospace engineers to the future tire engineers of America, or even the world. And what we're able to do is we're kind of able to give that kind of baseline to people to allow them to then be creative and do things outside of just their tablets and screens. Like, this is a very hands-on learning, and that's one thing that I talk quite a lot about is, we bring STEM education out of the classroom, right? It's not necessarily what you're learning on the page or on a tablet. It's actually applied STEM in a real-life scenario. And that's something that you can't get on a tablet. You have to be outside to do this. You have to be out in the freezing cold, being really cold out in the outside to actually experience this sport.
We aren't that far from Derby 100.
Yeah.
And do you have the exact count of days? I know it's
4,600 and some odd days away.
There you go.
It really changes obviously from day to day, but I keep on, we're not to 500 yet, so 4,600 and some odd days away. And the reason why that's important is, it's only 12 years. And we actually have 7-year-olds currently racing that'll still be racing at Derby 100, which is really important to me because, again, I am a kid from the program. I started out at 8 years old, and I stopped when I aged out. So it really isn't that long. We still have volunteers that were racing when I first started that are still volunteering today. And I've known Jeff and Bob now for 20 plus years, which is, wild. But it's not that far away, and the reason why it's important is because Derby 100, you can only celebrate once in your lifetime. You can't get a 100th birthday twice. Obviously Akron's celebrating 200, we're about to celebrate 100. And it's going to be a real spectacle for everybody. And as you can see on the photo, obviously we want to get back to the big crowds and the excitement that the Soapbox Derby, the spectacle that it used to be. But we want to make sure we're honoring the past, but also embracing the future.
I loved seeing this picture, and I saw this for the first time in July, where it looks like we have sort of like a festival village going on out there.
Yeah.
It looks like I'm getting air conditioning in the announcer's booth, which I was really happy about.
Maybe. But it's not necessarily all about the race. Obviously the race is very important. That's the reason why we do the thing. But we have this great facility that we can utilize and allow other things to happen while it's going on. Ancillary things to help draw crowds and allow people to come really experience what the Derby is about.
Well, we have a lot of questions from the audience to get to, so I've got a whole stack of cards here. So let's dive right into some of these.
Yeah.
What role did Shorty Fulton play in bringing the Derby to Akron?
Well, he was always very supportive of Akron, obviously. I don't know the specific role that he played, but I know he's in the pictures with Myron Scott, John Scott, and John Knight. Jeff is trying to give his signature.
He built the place.
Well,
That's the biggest.
well, he and the New Deal people.
This question, it says for Dennis. Meredith, I guess you can probably take this one too. What was your favorite division and why?
The stock division was actually my favorite division, and it was the one that I spent the most time in. The stock division is that first baseline, the first car that you get. Now you can do it at 7, but when I was a kid it was 8. And that was the division that I loved the most. And it was the one I was the most successful in, obviously, but it was also the one I spent the most time in, but it's also just the one I liked the most.
For me, I would definitely say my master car. I recently moved up this year from my Super to my master car, and I've been enjoying it a lot.
How much different is it when you go from the lean forward car to the layback car?
It's a crazy difference. Obviously, it's going to be different from leaning over to laying on your back, but just the perspective of it is immensely different. When you lay on your back, you can't really see the wheels or your car or much. You can really only see the road in front of you, which takes some practice to get used to.
I bet. Our next question, it says, do you have to build a new race car every year, or can you use the same car for multiple years?
Depends on how you race, and depends on how you win as well. I mean, obviously you can age out, so the way we have it set up now, where you can kind of go back as a rally champ a couple different years, you can kind of use that same car year after year after year. But for instance, like Colt here, for example, who won on the local side, we actually keep his car for eternity. His car is now our property, so once you win on the local side, we take ownership of that car, so it's actually retired forever. It kind of lives on that legacy. But for instance, when I won in my rally division in 2007, The next year, we came back out with that car. We raced it again, and we ended up winning the local in the Akron area that year. Didn't do well in the All-American for some reason, but for some reason we still won the local, and it was a successful year.
So, and I think when you win too, you get your picture on a plaque somewhere in Derby Downs. So there is a picture of young Dennis somewhere in the Blue Barn.
Yeah, the Blue Barn. If you ever go visit our museum, please call ahead. But if you do visit our museum, they're right on the wall. There's a picture of me at age 13. And actually, the other side of that pillar is my sister at age 13 as well. So it's kind of unique how we're next to each other, even though we're 6 years apart.
Our next question: did the Derby start at the top of the hill in the early years, then move down, and how did that all come about?
I think it only started close to the top one time. It's been, the length of the track has been changed several times. And most recently is when we put the bridge on the bottom of the hill over the finish line. We moved the finish line a little bit farther down the track, and it's now 959 feet versus 949, right, Jeff, for years?
989.
989. Jeff is my fact checker. I knew he would.
4 times.
Yes.
I would love just for fun to see somebody go down from the top, but I don't think you can with the ramps the way they are now. You would really have to line it up.
You would, believe it or not, this is a Derby-related story because it's Derby Downs. Back in the early 70s, the national skateboarding competition was at Derby Downs, and that was really wild. They did start at the top.
Oh wow!
We raced them with the Derby car.
Who won?
Yeah, of course.
That one. There you go.
It was rigged.
Dumb and stupid for going down there.
Next question I have here: who is the most decorated soapbox derby champion? I believe it's somebody from the modern era, right?
I believe it's Carly, right, Murphy? I believe it's Carly Murphy. I don't remember exactly how many she's won, but she's won at least four world championships. So Carly Murphy out of New York, she's our most decorated world champion. And a lot of that attributes to the way that we kind of re-qualify now as a world champion, which is great. I mean, it's something I wish that we had when I was a kid. But it's the modern era GOAT, some might say. It's Carly Murphy, and one of these years maybe she'll get, someone will beat her.
Let's see. We talked a lot about favorite memories already. Are there favorite memories? That's the question on the card. Are there favorite memories that we haven't talked about yet, guys?
Well, you mentioned earlier about it's a big family when people come back. I think for me personally, for being involved for so many years, is I got to know so many wonderful people. So those are my memories. And the world champions over the years, I went through some of their high school graduations, college graduations, law school graduations, their weddings. I've been to weddings of children of former champions. I mean, that's a wonderful feeling. So you look back, you just think about how great the people are who were involved in the program and the winners that I've had the privilege of knowing over the years. I started out in the Charlotte days while I was in college. I was a traveling chaperone for the world champ. And we went to the car shows in New York and Detroit and places like that. And those are just wonderful memories. And Kenny Klein, who won in '67, and we went to the New York Auto Show, we went to a couple other places. Now he's coming back and running our vintage car show, derby car show every year. So he won almost 60 years ago, and he's still coming back and contributing, and he does it on a local level in Texas too.
Yeah, the Vintage Derby Car Show, the Friday before the All-American, that day before is always a really neat event. Dennis, Meredith, any favorite memories we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, so honestly, my favorite memory is honestly the whole 2006 season. Obviously, we said a very successful season, but going to 81 races and kind of being out on the road almost every single weekend, obviously don't know what you're going to run into. But, I really remember a lot of that year. There's my second favorite memory, and I will mention it, because it just talks a little bit about the times. So obviously we talked about how iPads are kind of, a little bit of the thing. Back when I was racing, smartphones were just existing. So me and a buddy would actually sit in the grandstands and actually guess the time differentials between cars. And that's how we would pass our time between races. And I actually still remember that to this day. Some of the best times I had as a kid was just sitting there with my best friend, trying to guess the times and time differentials of the race. I'm not as good with the times, but I can tell you I'm pretty close still. And it's kind of funny how I can still kind of see it and kind of guess.
We need you up on the bridge next year for photo finishes then, I think.
I do a pretty good job from the top. Some people are like, how do you see it? And I'm like, I can see it.
Oh, man. Meredith, any more fun stories on your end? All right. What about another question from that same person? In your opinion, the most outstanding derby, and I don't know who wants to take that, but is there one year or one moment that really sticks out?
Probably the 25th would be probably the most one talked about, because it was the time that the whole cast of Bonanza was here, and obviously it was our silver anniversary. That's probably the most talked about derby. It's also probably the most largely attended derby as well. Besides that, for me, it's obviously the 2006 year with ESPN there. It was obviously a big heightened event. I mean, there was we at the time were probably 500 to 600 cars for race day, and it was a huge event. And we obviously had ESPN there. We had a lot of crowd. It was pretty much a big cultural moment for the derby.
Next question I have here: is there still a senior derby day? I think it just happened, didn't it?
Yeah, so we do still have public events all year round. Senior Day just happened in September, every September, usually a Thursday in September. We kind of change the date every once in a while, but it's still in September. We have Senior Day. We have an expo up at our blue building, and you can have a chance to go down a hill. If you want to learn more information about our events, just follow us on Facebook or go to our website, soapboxderby.org. We keep it updated pretty often. We are looking forward to hosting some more events next year. With us now moving towards flipping that calendar almost to 2026, we're thinking about what can we do for next year and how can we really open up the track and have more people come out and visit our facility.
And I love that you guys are focused on that, because there are so many people that when I explain that I'm the race announcer for the Soapbox Derby, they say one of two things. They say either, oh, it's that thing from the Scouts, right? Or they say, wait, how do I get to do that?
Yeah, and a lot of times for years it was only ever really used for Soapbox Derby racing, like either a rally race or a local race or the All-American for years. And one thing that was great from one of my predecessors, Joe Mazer, is he opened up the track and he allowed more people to come out and visit the track and actually be there and kind of participate in it. And it is, I mean, we are a city park. I mean, the city of Akron does help us with the facility, and it is a city park and allows us to kind of then showcase it to the Akron community.
Next question from the audience. Would the Derby ever move out of Akron?
No.
Well, I'm alive.
No, there was talk. There was talk back in the Chevy days where they actually developed a whole new racetrack in Flint, Michigan, where they actually have it still standing today. It's a 3-lane track. It's a beautiful facility that still races. They're actually in the process of rebuilding that track so that actually they can hold races again. Right now they're racing the street. But Flint, Michigan does exist, and Chevy was going to move it back to more closer to their facility, because for a long time, Chevrolet ran this thing out of their offices in Detroit. So they had to. I mean, it would make more sense for them to move it up there. But
All the time that Chevrolet was sponsored, it was run out of the General Motors marketing department.
yeah.
And the leaders came to Akron, set up shop with offices in the Mayflower Hotel for like 6 to 8 weeks. But the general manager was a Chevrolet marketing employee. Mike Myron Scott, who founded the program, worked for General Motors for years. He was general manager of the Derby, and his other claim to fame, if you ever go on Wikipedia, look at it, when he was with Chevrolet, and Chevrolet decided to come out with a new little sports car in the early 50s, Myron Scott named the Corvette. So he had a long career at General Motors.
But the short answer is no. I mean, I'm from the Akron area. I'm very proud that this thing is in our backyard, and I think Jason feels the same way. And we are really proud that this is in Akron, and it's a huge community impact.
Yeah, and not in my lifetime either. Not in my lifetime either. Let's go the other way with that. Are there any plans to expand the Derby site?
Yeah, we'd love to kind of upgrade the facility. For us right now, what we're really trying to work on is obviously how do we make this a little bit more accessible for our families to come out to our races. So whether that's bathrooms or pavilions or more facilities or even event space where we can have more people come and visit our facility, that's things that we're working towards. We want to make it more accessible, more of a destination for people. I have a history of working for the Pro Football of Fame, which is one of the most premier destinations in Stark County or even in Ohio. So I'm used to that kind of feeling, and I want to make Derby that same way.
How many repeat champions are there? That was another question from the audience. Does anybody know the exact number? I know we've had several.
It's less than 5 repeat champions.
Repeat champions, I think we're up to 9.
Really? Okay.
And then one at least 2.
Yeah.
3 out of them.
Yeah, I know Belfort, Carly, Hayes, Colton, and Delbert, usually one.
Even Matt Perez won as a local.
We're 5 to 10.
He won as a rally chair too, one time.
You can visit our website and we have a whole listing of our champions.
And it is a hard thing to do, to go back to
It
back.
is.
So when you see somebody win, like Harley did 4 times, or Kaysen, who's won 3 now, that's really hard, especially when you consider the format, you know, Americans.
Yeah, and in my era, there was no, we now have expanded and we have more racing throughout the week than we ever had in the past. Now, when I was racing, we had one racing on Saturday only. And if you got knocked out early, you didn't have a chance to come back. And even though we were a successful family, we didn't necessarily we were able to regain that success in the other divisions or the other times we were able to go back in the race. And a lot of that was because of just the way the Saturday is laid out. You know, there's some things that go on with the wheels and lanes and just kind of the time of the day that you don't necessarily have control over. But you know, I think about, and I'm kind of envious or jealous of it now. I'm like, I wonder how well we would be doing now if the format is the way it is now. I wish we would have done in that time frame.
Somebody wanted to know more about Jimmy Stewart. How many years was Jimmy Stewart in attendance, and is it fair to call him the biggest celebrity fan of the Derby?
Well, the second part, definitely. He was a celebrity guest 6 times. And he just loved the program, and he just came back. He invited himself. Not that Chevrolet was upset that he showed up. He was in fact, there was a famous story that he brought his wife here right after they got married and called it his honeymoon. But, and he was obviously, for the younger people in the audience here, he was the biggest thing. He could play any kind of role. And he was a very, very, very strong supporter of the Derby.
I don't know if it was the most, it depends on how you define the most, you know, influential. Obviously we had Ronald Reagan here, we had Nixon here at one point. In different avenues and different veins, we had some very big, powerful celebrities that were here. But Jimmy was obviously Jimmy. But I mean, heck, we had a young Tom Hanks here at one point. So.
I think Dale Earnhardt at one point.
Yeah, Dale, and he raised her.
So our next question, who was the tallest kid to win the Derby?
Right there behind you.
Cole.
6'1".
6'1". How do you fit 6'1" of somebody into a car like that?
Strategically.
And he broke the record that was set clear back in 1958 by Jim Miley at Muncie, Indiana. Correct, Jeff?
Right, Bob,
Thank
exactly.
you.
Somebody wanted to know a little bit more about the distance changes. Was there a certain impetus for that, or was it just we wanted to shorten it up, or what happened?
I'm sorry,
The distance changes on the track.
safety. It was primarily like this.
Makes sense.
And the extension was because of the bridge.
All right, our next question here. Are the most successful racers now grandkids of past racers? People mention names like Iola, Acker, Underwood, so forth and so on. So do you find that the most successful drivers are family members or second, third, fourth generation type of champs?
Sometimes. I would say historical, you know, relevance of being in the Derby helps. Obviously get you that first start. But I would say it's probably 60% car, the rest is the kid. And if the kid's not there, you're not going to be successful. I mean, for prime example, me. We had the car, but I sucked. So it took me 4.5 years to figure it out.
Yeah, he wasn't good.
I was not good.
That's the fact that he was really hoping nobody would verify, I think, right? So, but then how do we get more people involved? And it says on the question, we old guys won't last forever. But how do we go about, you sort of touched on it a little bit already, Dennis. How do we get more new blood and more people involved and excited about this?
It's getting the kids started. It's attaching to these young families and getting them started in our divisions, the stock divisions right off the gate, getting them started early at a young age, at 7. Because in reality, if we get them started at a young age, the likelihood of them buying a superstock car and then continue on with the program is very, very high. And one thing that's unique and interesting about us is, and it's not necessarily, it's a problem that's happening all across the country. It's something that's happening in our Akron community as well. And it's necessarily volunteerism is kind of down across the nation. You know, there's a reason why Kiwanis clubs, Rotary clubs, Optimist clubs, even us, we're struggling with volunteers. And a lot of that is because the volunteers that are happening now are not necessarily, my age or even a little bit above me are not necessarily volunteering like we did in the past. And it's not necessarily because they don't want to. A lot of times they do, but they don't have the time or the commitment level to do it. And it's just allowing them to be able to participate and figure out ways to allow them to volunteer in a certain way that they actually find beneficial and willing to involve the whole family. That's how you'll get involved in volunteers for the long term.
One other way that I was thinking about too, and I don't know how much we touched on the Gravity Racing Challenge, where you have school teams now coming to Derby Downs and racing. Usually it's in late spring. But you have middle school teams, you have high school teams. I gotta think that's one way that you can get more people involved, right? It's just getting it to them where, hey, you have to do this to get a good grade in class, and then they realize how much fun it is.
It's just like alumni at the University of Akron, for example. You know, if you attach yourself to the experience of being a Akron student, I'm from the University of Akron, so I'm going to talk about the University of Akron. Go Zips. Sorry, Jason.
Go Flashes.
But what it does, if you allow them to participate at a young age and start them, being current students, the likelihood of them coming back as alumni and having a better, more positive experience about their time at the university is when they do have that positive experience. So it's the same thing for us. So if we can get kids interested in the soapbox derby, get them a part of our derby experience, the likelihood of them coming back and doing the same thing with their kids and then also volunteering on top of it. Because once you're there, you have downtime. You're going to be there and helping. So you're going to start volunteering some more often the more time you're there. So that's how we got to make that bloodline.
Now, how does somebody get involved? If somebody is here in the audience tonight or watching this and saying, hey, I'd love to get my kid, grandkid, niece, nephew involved, what is the process for that?
Yeah, so just visit us at soapboxderby.org. We also have QR codes with some different information on the table outside. You can reach out to me or Jacqueline over there as well. Jacqueline's our volunteer coordinator. She'll be able to help you out and get you set up to whenever you guys want to do anything. But you can reach out to me as well. I have cards in my pocket. Feel free to reach out to me anytime.
There are also a lot of people who maybe don't have kids or don't have kids of racing age who might want to get involved in some form or fashion. So what kind of opportunities are there for those folks?
Yes, we also have Race Week. Race Week's a huge animal that we take on to the community here at Akron, where we have multiple weekdays worth of events, where we have different opportunities at the track or downtown. The same thing all across our event calendar, whether it's Senior Day to a Veterans Day to a Day Out with Dad, or etc. You can really have other opportunities, not just impact the derby experience, but also just impact the derby.
We are about out of questions here, so I want to thank all three of you for being with us. Let's hear it one more time for Bob Troyer, Meredith Brown, and Dennis VanFossen Jr.
Well, thank you. This was a really great panel. Thank you to all of our panelists, our moderator. The Soapbox Derby is such an iconic Akron